I thought I would probably do it up in 5 years. I've had the car 52 years, and I'm still working on it. That is a 1936 Auburn Model 654, four-door convertible sedan, commonly known as a Phaeton. It was just a car I fell in love with when I first seen it. I liked it, and I decided to restore it. Pretty well a basket case when I got it. There was the engine was in it, the transmission, the rear end, but that's basically all. There was no fenders, no convertible top. The interior was totally horrible, just horrible.
It was that bad.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's horrible.
Rough.
Yeah.
When you saw it that rough, did you picture where it is today?
Being that young, no. But as I grew up, I was pretty impressed how it turned out, for sure. Never thought that bucket of rust would have turned into something so beautiful. No, I wouldn't have thought that.
The first time I seen it, I think, would have been in the driveway, looking like just a soapbox derby car. 4 wheels, a front hood, and not even a back to the car, with a crate for a seat, Coca-Cola crate for a seat.
I was young, but definitely sitting on, I believe, a milk crate. I don't think there's any seats. Driving along the road, looking down. I don't even know if it was pavement. It could have been gravel. I don't remember that, but I could see the road. There was no floorboards. I could see the road, and I thought that was super cool.
You thought it wasn't scary?
No, it was awesome.
And I remember my dad pulling this car trailer with this antique sitting on the back of the trailer and pulling up and into the driveway. And my first recollection is that he bought that thing because it was all rusted out. And I tell you, it didn't look like much at the time, but fortunately my dad knew what the car was, what it meant, what a historic vehicle it was, and what a beautiful vehicle it would end up being. So yes, for a little while, yeah, he was driving around on a milk crate.
Well, you don't really look at the car, you look at the potential of the car. What can it be? What will it be? And will this be a nice car when it's done?
What's your first memory with the Auburn?
My first memory is we can't afford it. When you think about it, I was a stay-at-home mom. Papa was the only income coming in. And I was concerned about whether we'd have enough money to give the kids what they wanted. But he worked so hard, he deserved it. So anyways, when the car came, it took us a lot of years to get it on the road. The one thing I learned was when he went out to a flea market and bought a rusty old part that I thought should have went in the garbage. Turned out to be a very expensive part. So it looked a lot better once it was chromed and polished. And I realized the worth of it.
For Auburn parts, there's no good price.
It's all bad.
They're all way up there with an arm and a leg.
To me, it was garbage.
He always showed us pictures of what this vehicle was going to look like in the future. So that's what we had promised for.
Quite often he'd be looking for old magazines that might be around. He'd be looking for advertisements of the car so that he could put them in frames and show them off. Looking for signs, things like that. And so these are antique items that he could put on display when he was showing off his car at the same time.
Yeah, good call. First seen it on the road when he was towing it with a skipping rope. But it was actually running and driving. It was to make it look like he was actually being towed when it wasn't being towed. It was actually being driven. So the skipping rope broke numerous times.
One of the things that I actually really enjoyed doing with my dad was going out to all these antique shows. And we went to a lot of these flea markets. And so anyways, you know, on these weekends that he would take me along, we'd go out to these flea markets and we would go up one aisle and down the next aisle and up the next road and down the next aisle, up and down again. And we hadn't found a damn thing. And it was sort of, as you're discussing it with your father and such, my dad, you find out that it was a pretty rare car that we were, hunting for parts. And I mean, like, really hunting. And you just couldn't find them everywhere because of the rarity of the car itself.
The club has 13 of them listed in 1935 and 36, totally. There's only 4 listed in 1936. The other 9 are 1935s, which is just a badge number.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more out there, but they're waiting to be found. And when you do find them, they are pretty darn rough.
What was the feeling of knowing that there's a place celebrating your car? How did that inspire you?
Well, it's almost like going back to your old house that you were born in. Hey, here's the place of where these cars were made, and I've got one, and I'm in the and that was, we were coming back from Jacksonville, Florida is where we were coming from. We had the second parts car in the back of a 5-ton truck, and we made a detour to go through there because I needed specific photos, detailed photos, so I could make sure that my car was Auburn correct. So I wanted detailed photos, and I've probably done that with a half a dozen other different cars just to make sure that, hey, everyone is the same way. But now with the internet, you don't even need to do that. Everything is online.
Okay, just Google issues,
Yeah,
right?
there's a place that the fellow has a website that every single part of your car, you can even right down to the nut, the bolt, the washer, the lock washers, know exactly whether they were painted, whether they were not painted. This car is probably 98.5, 100% authentic. That's how close it is to, like, I never even, very few parts that I have to manufacture for this car. Just trying to find them is a big thing.
One part of the car that was missing, or I shouldn't say missing, but it was probably just so rusted through that it couldn't be restored or reused, was a running board. And that was the running board that went from on the passenger side, that goes from the front fender all the way to the back fender. In the olden days, you'd open the door, you'd step on the running board, and you'd hop into the car. For years and years and years, we'd be going to these flea markets and on the lookout for a running board. And he'd be trying to find one and never really did. So he ended up buying a running board off another different version of an Auburn, but something that was similar. And actually had to take one part of the running board and take another piece of it, cut it down, and actually weld it in the middle, and then flatten it down and really polish it up. And so he kind of made his own running board, but he bought all the original kind of rubber and stuff like that to make it look like an actual original. And if there was anything, that's probably the one thing. And to this day, actually, he bought another Auburn that was in pieces from a man down in Florida that he'd saw an advertisement in a magazine. And one of the reasons for buying that car was, in fact, he knew that he was going to get his running board to make the entire car completely authentic. Well, I just learned today, to this very day, because I was asking about that running board, he never replaced the one that he made with the original. So after all these years looking for one, he found one and didn't replace the one that he had made, because 99% of people out there would never have a clue that it was not manufactured right from the plant.
Even if you're a machinist, you can make a lot of stuff, but if you don't have the part to make it from, or you don't know what the hell you're making.
Yeah.
So you really need a complete car so you know what you're doing with it. This car originally never came with the 2-speed rear end in it. But so the first car I bought, I wanted the 2-speed rear end, and I needed the 2-speed steering column for it. So that was the major parts that I took off of that I just put in this car about 5 years ago. One of them had already been used as a parts car for parts to restore another Auburn.
So it's already been rifled through.
Yeah, but there was parts on it that I needed some parts of the convertible top that I needed that I couldn't buy. So I just bought the whole car for that. It was just too hard. I had, like I said, bought 2 other cars to get parts off of to complete this car.
Okay.
Nothing major, but lots of little things that you just, well, specifically with the Auburn, you just can't buy them. They're just, you almost need to cut your arm off and give it to them for some of the parts. They're so expensive.
Totally.
So I would say that I'm too old to do it now, but if I was ever to do another car, it would be a car that's totally complete, that I just have to freshen up.
One other thing is, like, we couldn't afford that car if he wasn't a mechanic, because he can do all the work himself.
If I counted all my hours, I'd probably get $100,000 into it, or more.
That's true.
You know,
Percentage number on how much of the car he's done himself by hand.
I'd put that very high. I would probably put that close to like 95%.
I feel I can do just about almost anything I want to do. As far as I can do woodworking. I have a complete woodworking shop. I've got a complete machine shop here.
Yeah.
I've got a complete mechanical shop. So my strengths, I guess, just a little bit of knowledge of everything.
I think he likes to work alone a lot. We would go to school and come back, and most of the motorcycle or mini bike he was working on for us was done, just because I think he enjoys working by himself.
He is like a stud with a big red car. He goes off to festivals and stuff. You know, is there ever any jealousy or worries with your husband when he heads off?
Not ever.
So it's been a happy marriage.
That's right.
Well, Mom was always very supportive of Dad's work in the car because she knew it was his labor of love. So she was always there for him. And, you know, Mom never ever heard you complain about him going off to one of these flea markets and coming home with a trailer full of parts. So I know that he very much appreciated that.
Well, she helped me a lot on it. She'd be out here working on it with me.
Really?
Oh yeah. Many a times I had to have her come out and give me a hand because you can't always lift something by yourself or hold something in place or whatever, and she would come out and do it, or she'd come out and watch me make a part.
Nanny's contribution would have been, Terry, the phone's for you, because he was always out in the garage, or your tea's ready and come in for dinner.
Keeping it all going. Well, I think allowing him to go off to his little flea markets when he needed to get the parts. He'd go down to Hershey, Pennsylvania for, I think it was a week at a time, and she had to look after 3 young kids. And we were so excited for him to come back. Maybe not necessarily because we missed him, but we all got a box of Hershey's chocolate bars. So we were pretty excited about that. But my mom kept it all going because she allowed him to have the time to do all these things, as well as his 2 jobs and everything else he did around the house.
As long as the kids were looked after first, the car came second. Because at the time when I bought this car, and you have 3 children, you're working from paycheck to paycheck to pay your bills, pay your mortgage, pay your food, and put the kids through hockey or figure skating, swimming, or whatever else they wanted to do. That came first. The car came second.
You know, it wasn't something that he was constantly working on at all. It was one of those things where, you know, if he had time on one weekend, or if he was at a flea market and found a special part, he might come back and work on it for a few days and get it ready to be introduced to the car.
Trying to find time to get on it and continue it was probably tough because it sat, like I said, for a long time, and it probably bothered him that he wasn't getting ahead with it.
How did you guys find time between 3 kids, a dog, multiple old cars? Papa's working 2 jobs. You worked a job at one point. How did you find time for all that? How did you do that?
Well, with the car, that's why it took so long to get it on the road. Because we didn't really get it on the road for years and years.
It's true.
Because it was only when it was convenient. Weeks and months go by that he didn't get on it.
Did you ever help him with the Auburn?
No, probably hindered him. Think about it. We brought home mini bikes that were seized and cars with no engines. So he had a lot of work to do for us before he worked for himself.
Like every car that the kids had, he did the work on them. You know, because they were young, they bought their own cars, so he had to do their brakes and stuff like that. So he was always busy and helping the neighbors out too.
He seemed to be fixing cars from all the neighbors all the time. So someone would have a problem and Dad would bring the car in and for practically nothing would fix the car up and give it back, and that neighbor would be back on the road again. And so he was doing that, quite a bit of that work all the time. One of the things is nobody touched that car except for my dad. So
we were probably told never to go near it when he was building it and don't touch any of the parts. And
there was a lot of time. I did spend a lot of time with him out in the garage as he was working on it and things like that. But no, he let me fix my own cars and taught me about that stuff. But that's his baby. He wasn't letting anybody touch his baby.
Fair.
Very few people were allowed to work on that car, and the people that did work on it for him, they're very, very skilled in that sense. So,
Can you remember anything where there was like substantial delays or substantial setbacks with the car that he might have gone through, some hardships? Do you remember any of those days?
You're not talking about the chip in the car, I hope.
That might be. I don't know. Maybe a fire here and there. I'm not sure.
I don't know if there was ever a fire.
I think there was a fire and it was
I don't remember that. Maybe you forgot to
ruined
tell
all
me.
the paint or something.
You might have forgot to tell me about that.
the original color of the car, I don't know if you know this, but the original color of the car that he was painting, it was going to be a beige with a dark brown trim rather than the cherry that that is on it right now. And of course, both colors were authentic from the original cars that were manufactured at the plant. But anyways, the day that Johnny had painted this car, this Auburn, this 1936 Auburn four-door convertible, this beautiful light beige color, he had a fire in the other bay. And what ended up happening is that it wasn't a big fire or anything like that, but what had happened was the soot that was in the air was able to travel through the air ducts through the two garage bays, and just tiny specks of the soot could be seen embedded in the paint, and you couldn't get it out. It was in there because the paint was still drying. So after all these years and years of work, getting the body work done and finally getting it painted, this accident happens.
I had just had it out of the paint shop about 2 days. My wife's uncle came in, I was cutting a piece of pipe, he turned around, smashed my front fender, never said a word. So I never said a word, and I just said, that's it. I put the car away for 5 years.
It was a brand new paint job, so any little nick would have been substantial. But I can't remember exactly, but I don't think it was massive, but it was definitely, ruined the paint job.
He probably didn't touch that car for another 4 years after that because he was just so downtrodden about the event that occurred. So anyways, I just thought I would share that because he ended up a couple years later getting motivated again and decided to paint it a completely different color. Again, another manufacturer color, but something a little bit different, and it's turned into just such a gorgeous automobile.
Al's been tremendous. He was really they wanted to push me to get the car on the road. He said, he came over one day and we're talking here, and he said, let's get this car on the road. I said, well, it's down to upholstery right now, and that's what it was. And he helped me put the upholstery in the car.
If he was tinkering in there, it was always maybe Pops was in there helping him, just sitting in there. Uncle Ferdy was always in there. And of course, Al in the last probably 20 years or so was in there.
Well, Al Zaccato is certainly a good friend of his that has spent a lot of time with him. Searching for things, going to the flea markets, looking around and such.
Oh, Al was amazing. He was the one that sort of said to Papa, come on, you got to get this thing going. Let's get on it. And I think he put some motivation huge behind it and just got him moving on it and helped him out from just being a good friend and being there and supporting him.
As far as I know.
We'll pause. Pause.
Thank you.
That's a good ringtone.
Oh, my brother. Hello? Oh, I'm over at Terry's. I told you where I was going. I'm being interviewed for on a film.
He's on air.
No, it's true. Are you there? She hung up.
I've tried calling this guy 2 times. He never answers. This guy needs an agent. He's too hard to book. When was the first time you saw the Auburn? What did it look like?
Well, it was it was dusty in a corner of the garage.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw it. Like, you know, and that he had it there for years. Like, that was before he did any work on it.
Oh, okay. So it was just sitting.
It's just sitting there. He bought it and then he put it away there and never got around to it, you know. And then time went by again, and then I started urging him, get this thing finished. Like, you know, let's do something, like, especially in the winter. We had nothing to do, you know. I said, I want to putt around with you on it. Like, you know, I couldn't do anything myself, but I mean, if I can help him or, you know, pull or hold or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so finally we got going. So he got he bought the cow hides. I think it was 2 cow hides he needed for the seats and the doors and all that.
I found a lady friend that did the upholstery. It took, I think I've got four cows in there or 4 horses. I forget what it is, but it's all genuine leather in the car.
Horsepower vehicle.
Yeah, genuine leather in the car. Yeah.
And then that following winter, then we started putting it on, and we put it around all winter, really. You know, to put it on and take our time to go for a coffee. You know, the usual. Our usual.
Having a good time.
We were having a good time. You know, and then tinker here and tinker there and have joy. Like, you know, was, you know, seeing him do his work. And if he lets me, like, you know, touch something, but you know your grandfather, right? Yeah. No. Stay away from the car.
If there was anything I needed or wanted, or if I needed, if I was working on the car at 3 a.m. and I phoned him up, he would come over and give me a hand. I would never do that, but he would do that.
It's been implied that if my papa had an issue at like 4 o'clock in the morning, there's somebody he would call that would always be there for him. Do you have any idea who that might be?
Probably me.
That is wild.
And he just loves working on the old cars. He loves watching me work, loves watching me make things. I'm not saying...
You're very lucky to have a friend like that.
Very lucky, yeah.
It's just a love for the seeing it, you know, like come alive, like, you know, like getting it done, and we enjoy tinkering with it. Like we used to go to wrecking yards.
Yeah.
You know, and my wife would say, well, where are you going? I said, I'm going with Terry. We're going to the wrecking yard. What are you going to do there? Nothing. We're just going to see what's there. Like, you know, it's just interesting to us.
You bring him along everywhere, basically.
Oh, we go all over the place like that, yeah.
Just a great friendship. They have a lot of things that they like in common, and they love going to flea markets.
Oh, he was a great guy. That's the first thing I would say. Great in many ways. He is giving, not a taker.
I would say that he is a jack of all trades. He can do anything. You ask him something, he knows the answer. 99.99999% he's right and knows it. That one little tiny percentage, it's hard to get him to admit that he's wrong. He will do it eventually, but it's hard.
I don't say, well, I'm right. You know, I say, well, okay, there's maybe he's right. You know, like I give the other person a benefit of the doubt.
How would you describe Papa's workflow?
Very efficient. Unlike myself, where I can't find a tape measure, he knows exactly where everything is. Hence, he bought me about 3 or 4 tape measures so he could at least find one when he was working up here.
Well, my grandfather, you know, we called him Pop. Yeah, you know, you guys called him Pops and such. He was born in northern Ontario and grew up with very little. So, you know, I think as a generation that grew up in northern Ontario in the 1930s and such, where all winter long, all that you were eating were potatoes and carrots that you could store in the freezer, or I shouldn't say freezer, I should say icebox, you know, over the winter. You know, you didn't have a lot of expectations and such, but, you know, my grandfather was very supportive as well and always appreciated the fact that the talent that my dad had.
Oh, he would have been so proud. Absolutely so proud of him.
I think he wouldn't have said much. He was a man of few words, but he would have had a big smile on his face. And he would have did the old
Oh, he'd be very proud, because he loved cars too. I can remember Papa had an older car because he didn't have to wear seat belts in it, and Nana didn't want to wear a seat belt. But the whole floor was rusted out. So Papa spent his whole holidays putting a new floor in his dad's car.
Oh, he'd have a great big smile on his face, and he'd be pretty happy. And I'm the same way. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
You know, just take a look at it. It speaks for itself.
It's true.
It does, yeah. Any place I go with it, I get nothing but compliments. I've won 3 best of shows with it.
And as you can see, the darn thing looks like a brand new car.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, it's just, to me, like, I've never seen one that nice.
Well, one of the things for me that I don't even know if my dad knows this, but quite often I'll pull out his business card that he's got with the Auburn right on the front of the business card, and just to show people, say, hey, look what my dad's got here. This is a 1936 Auburn. This is pretty cool, isn't it?
We took it to a parade one time, and believe it or not, I like to kind of lay low in a huge crowd like that, so I put my baseball cap on in the passenger seat, my sunglasses, and my buddies from hockey still noticed me and ran up to the car. So, but it was pretty neat being in a parade with that, plus just all the attention it gets.
Unfortunately, I think myself and Glenn didn't have the opportunity to be in it during our weddings. And just because it wasn't finished yet, it hadn't been fully restored, hadn't been fully painted or stuff like that. But Bev, being the youngest,
I was driven to my wedding in the car. That was awesome. And all our wedding pictures are in that car. So forever, everyone's going to have that in their memories. It was pretty cool.
Well, your dad took it out for a drive last year for the first time ever.
Really? And how did that make you feel as the person that created the car that he's got his feet on?
Well, I was with him and showing him how to shift the gears. Like all these old cars have little idiosyncrasies. They don't have a lot of new stuff that you can just get in and drive the car. You got to do certain little things. If I showed you the dash right now, you wouldn't even know where the starter is on this car. It's not on the floor, and it's not on the ignition. You know, so and it has a steering wheel lock on it, so that if you turn the key off and put the lock on, it locks the steering wheel. Now they came out with that probably in the 60s. Something brand new, but here's a car that already had it.
That was pretty special. I thought one thing that shocked me the most was, because he looks like he's driving it so easy, is when I took it out, and obviously I could beat him in an arm wrestle, but when I took it out, I could hardly turn that thing around a corner. That's what shocked me the most. Well, you gotta look at it this way. You're driving with the owner in the car that's built it for that many years. So the last thing you know he wants to hear is you grinding gears. So for me, it was bittersweet. It was cool to drive it, but it was also nerve-wracking going, what's this in between there?
I think I've instilled that into you, your dad, our family, that hard work pays off. And this is a classic example of hard work paying off.
Okay, well, Dad is someone who has very many talents, not only mechanically with the automobiles, but also being a skilled machinist, a woodworker, someone who can, he's not allowed to weld anymore, but welding is another thing that he'd done so well.
To grow up in the environment that he did, it was a loving family, don't get me wrong. It's just he had to look out for himself, and to know where he's come from and what he's achieved in his life and everything that he can do, and the fact that he is always right, which does drive me crazy, I will admit. I love him. I think he's amazing. I think he's a super person, a super dad, and I think he's incredible.
You know, it's inspired me to get things done. You just, when you work on something, you finish it. That's what he's always done.
He's good company most of the time. I'm only kidding. No, he is good company. He is knowledgeable. He very intelligent, I think, my opinion anyways. And he's a good man, you know, like he's honest.
Well, he's a great family man, and he's a great person to look after you. And he helps everybody.
I want to preserve the old cars, and whether you have lots of money and you can pay somebody to do it, or whether you can do it yourself and then go through all of the little pitfalls and all the little cuts and bruises and yourself, it's still enjoyment either way. I enjoy all old cars.
Even though it's not my car, and I didn't do anything to speak of, you know. I mean, I helped them with upholstery and that, but like it's more like holding and pushing and pulling, stuff like that. But I was part of it, and then to see it finished, like, you know, it's just like your own baby, you know. Yeah, it's really, really rewarding.
It's always a challenge. Even if I've never seen it before, it's a challenge. I think the biggest part was once I had overhauled the engine, and I got the engine sitting in the car on the frame. There was no body on it then. I took the body off. Now the engine is sitting in the frame. There is the bones of the car, and that's I think probably the best time I felt. Just because I could actually run it around the survey, sitting on a crate with no body on it, and it was drivable.
How much work do you think he's put into that mechanical work, like building the car and constructing it?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Not even a
because
guess for how many hours maybe?
Oh, I don't know. I think a lot of hours because he's still doing stuff on it.
This is a car that'll be around for probably another 100 years.
Role reversal. You have the power seat now.
Okay.
Do you want to ask me some questions? What do you think? You quiz me. What do you think I know about this?
Yeah, tell me what you know about my car.
Okay, so this beauty right here is my papa's car, his red Auburn, and he's put a lifetime of work into it.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time you showed up, it was a big deal to you, and it was a big deal to my parents, and it was a big deal to my family, but I didn't understand how long you had put into the car at the time.
Yeah.
I just knew it as your car, and I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize how emotionally important it was for everyone because they'd seen it in pieces and coming together the whole time.